It was the brutal winter of December 1944, deep in the heart of the Ardennes forest. Snowfall covered everything in a suffocating white silence, broken only by the distant rumble of artillery. Commander Thomas Hale, just 28 years old, led his armored unit, the Iron Wolves, through enemy lines under freezing, near-blinding fog. Hale was no ordinary soldier. He was known for his unnerving composure, even as shells exploded around him, for his precise commands that often saved entire platoons. That night, his orders were clear: move east through the forest, flank the German line, and hold until sunrise. It was a mission filled with danger, but Hale accepted it without hesitation. He was the kind of man who never questioned his duty, until the night questioned him. As the convoy pushed deeper into the forest, visibility dropped to almost zero. Men inside the tank later described how even the headlights could barely cut through the mist. Then, suddenly, radio contact began to fade. First a crackle, then silence. The squad following Hale's Sherman tank heard one final message. Wolf 1 moving ahead. No visuals, will report in 5. After that, nothing. The tank rolled forward into the fog, and its heavy treads left deep marks in the snow. Marks that ended abruptly, as if the ground had swallowed them whole. When backup arrived an hour later, the area was empty. No wreckage, no fire, just the faint smell of burnt oil hanging in the frozen air. By morning, the Iron Wolves had lost not just a tank, but their commander. The army searched for days, combing through the forest with dogs and aerial support. Not a single piece of debris was ever found. Locals claimed they heard the sound of metal grinding in the distance that night, followed by a low mechanical growl that faded into silence. The military wrote it off as an equipment loss during combat. But among the soldiers who served under Hale, no one believed that. They said he was too skilled, too sharp to simply vanish. Something else had happened in that fog, something no one could explain. Years passed after the war, but the story of Commander Hale's disappearance refused to fade. Among the people living near the Ardennes, it grew into something darker, an unofficial legend whispered from generation to generation. Locals began calling it the ghost tank of the Ardennes, claiming that Hale's Sherman still roamed the woods at night. Villagers spoke of hearing a low, metallic rumble echoing through the forest just before dawn. Too deep to be a truck, too smooth to be thunder. Some said it came from beneath the ground, like an engine buried alive, still trying to move. The older farmers warned their children not to go near the eastern ridge, especially when the fog thickened, because that's when the Iron Wolf was said to awaken. Hunters and loggers added to the mystery. They described seeing a dim, orange light moving between the trees, flickering like a headlamp struggling through smoke. Others reported the ground trembling slightly, as if something massive passed just below the surface. One hunter, Pierre Leduc, swore that he stumbled upon tracks in the snow. Large tread marks that stopped suddenly at the edge of a frozen creek, with no continuation on the other side. Even more disturbing, he claimed to find footprints beside them, deep and heavy, leading away from where the tank had supposedly stopped. But the tracks ended after only 6 steps, vanishing completely into untouched snow. When Pierre told the story at the local bar, no one laughed. Everyone in that valley had heard something similar at least once. Over time, the forest gained a reputation no map could record. Travelers avoided it, and even the military archives noted unexplained mechanical noises reported by passing convoys in the 1950s and 60s. Some believed it was the sound of Hale's crew, still fighting a battle that never ended. Others thought it was something far worse, a loop in time, where that tank was trapped, replaying its final mission over and over. Locals would sometimes wake to find small patches of scorched ground, or the faint smell of diesel carried by the wind. Whatever it wasn't gone. The war might have ended, but in that forest, something had refused to rest. Nearly 4 decades later, in the summer of 1984, a team of amateur military historians ventured into the Ardennes woods, hoping to document forgotten battlefield relics. Led by Professor Martin Keller, the group carried metal detectors, cameras, and maps drawn from old U.S. archives. The air was damp and still, thick with the scent of moss and decay. After days of searching, their equipment began to react violently in a small clearing near a ridge, an area locals had always warned them to avoid. The detectors screamed all at once, signaling a massive metallic object buried beneath the earth. At first, they assumed it was another wrecked vehicle or artillery piece. But as they dug through the soil, what emerged was unlike anything they had ever seen before. The rusted edge of armor plating appeared, followed by the unmistakable curve of a Sherman M4 tank turret. As they cleared more of the dirt away, the tank's insignia came into view. U.S. Army Hale unit, Iron Wolves. The paint, though faded, was still legible. The historians fell silent. This was the very tank that had vanished in 1944 without a trace. Its position made no sense. It was miles off the original battle maps, far from any known German or Allied movement. When they pried open the main hatch, expecting nothing more than old bones and rust, the air that escaped wasn't foul or stale. It was dry, unnervingly clean, as though the tank had been sealed yesterday. Inside, they found 5 skeletal remains, sitting perfectly upright in their positions, still wearing their helmets and uniforms. Every piece of fabric, every bullet belt, even the boots were preserved, untouched by rot or decay. But one thing was wrong. The commander's seat was empty. The deeper they looked, the stranger it became. The radio unit inside was still faintly humming, its dials glowing with a weak orange light, despite being disconnected from any power source. Tools were laid neatly on the floor, as if someone had just finished repairing something and stepped out. On the dashboard, a logbook was found open to the date December 17, 1944, the day Hale disappeared. The last entry was a single, hurried line, visibility gone, moving through the fog. "Something's ahead of us, not enemy." Those words chilled the team. The pages beneath were blank, untouched by time. When they climbed out of the tank, the forest around them seemed unnaturally quiet. No wind, no birds, just the echo of their own breathing and the faint metallic creak of something settling beneath the earth, as if the Iron Wolf had just exhaled after 40 years of silence. When the military recovery team arrived to secure the site, they expected to find the usual aftermath of decay and rust, just another relic of the war. But what they uncovered inside the tank sent shivers through even the most seasoned investigators. The engine, despite being buried for 40 years, was almost completely intact. When they tried to turn the crank manually, it rotated smoothly, like a machine that had been maintained only days before. The gears were oiled, the wiring uncorroded, and even the fuel lines still smelled faintly of diesel. One engineer, a veteran mechanic, backed away in disbelief, muttering that metal doesn't age like this. Then came the watch, still strapped to the skeleton of the co-pilot, its face cracked, but the second hand still ticking. They checked it against their own wristwatches. It showed the exact time of the discovery, 2:47 p.m. Scientists were called in to analyze the find. They tested the materials, expecting radiation, magnetic anomalies, something to explain why everything had been preserved. But the results made no sense. The samples showed no corrosion, no trace of oxidation, no biological decay of any kind. It was as though the tank and its contents had been frozen in a vacuum of time. Even the mud coating its exterior was chemically inconsistent with the soil it was buried in. Stranger still, the radio, the same one that had hummed when the historians found it, continued to emit a faint static tone, even after being disconnected from all power. The frequency it broadcast on was long abandoned since the 1940s, yet when recorded and analyzed, it seemed to pulse in a rhythmic pattern. Some believed it was Morse code, but the only letters that repeated clearly were H and A, the first two letters of Hale's name. As news spread, the nearby villagers began to report something chilling. The nights grew restless again. The same distant rumble of an engine began echoing through the forest, only louder now, closer. Livestock would panic without reason, staring into the woods as if something massive moved in the dark. The air itself seemed to hum, carrying a faint metallic vibration that people could feel in their bones. Members of the excavation team started experiencing vivid nightmares. Visions of a fog-covered battlefield, the glow of headlamps, the thunder of shells. One of them claimed he woke up to the smell of burning fuel and saw muddy footprints leading away from his tent. Prints shaped like a soldier's boot, but ending halfway across the floor, vanishing into nothing. Even the most skeptical began to wonder, had uncovering the tank disturbed something that wasn't meant to be found? Weeks after the discovery, the excitement had turned into something darker. Members of the recovery team began to resign, claiming the site was cursed. The most unnerved of them all was David Reynolds, the lead field coordinator who had overseen the excavation. At first, he brushed off the eerie stories told by locals and his own men, until the strange events started following him home. He reported hearing faint static from his radio at night, even when it was unplugged. His wife mentioned that he often sat awake until morning, staring at nothing, his hands trembling as though he could still feel the vibration of the tank's engine. He began keeping a journal, detailing every odd occurrence, doors creaking at specific times, a deep humming noise coming from underground, and the constant feeling that someone was standing just behind him. Those entries grew more frantic by the day, his handwriting more uneven, until his final note simply read, "is still out there." He never stopped fighting. A week after that entry, David vanished. His truck was found abandoned on a narrow forest road, just miles from where the tank had been unearthed. The engine was still running, the driver's door wide open, the keys in the ignition. Searchers followed what appeared to be fresh tank, tracks pressed deep into the mud, leading straight into a thicket of trees where no vehicle could possibly pass. But halfway through, the tracks ended abruptly, as if the massive machine had lifted off the ground or simply dissolved into the earth. Near the spot where the tracks stopped, investigators found David's flashlight lying on the ground, still flickering weakly. The batteries, when tested later, were brand new, even though the model hadn't been produced since the 1970s. There was no sign of struggle, no footprints leading away. It was as if he had stepped into the fog and never stepped out. After his disappearance, the tank was moved to a secure military facility in Germany, sealed off from public access. But strange reports continued. Technicians assigned to examine the vehicle claimed that, when left alone, its radio would power on by itself, broadcasting bursts of static that gradually formed into faint, broken words. On more than one occasion, witnesses claimed to hear a voice, calm, commanding, distinctly American, repeating old military codes from the 1940s. Some even said the tank's lights flickered in sync with the transmission, glowing through the cracks like eyes waking from a long sleep. Those who worked near it refused to stay past dusk. They said that whenever fog rolled in, the steel walls of the storage hangar began to vibrate, as though something inside was restless, waiting for orders that were given 80 years ago. Even now, decades later, the mystery of Commander Thomas Hale and his Iron Wolf remains unsolved. The U.S. Army officially lists him as missing in action, but the soldiers who know the legend say that isn't true. That some battles are never meant to end. Those who have heard the tank's low growl in the mist, or caught the faint flicker of its light deep in the woods, swear that Hale is still out there, somewhere between life and death, still carrying out his final command. The forest of Ardennes has long since grown over, its scars of war hidden beneath moss and roots. But on certain nights, when the fog creeps low and the air turns unnaturally still, the locals say the ground trembles, just enough to make the windows rattle. And if you listen closely, beneath the wind, you might hear it too, the distant churn of an engine, the echo of steel treads rolling through time. Because some soldiers never return home, some never surrender, and some never stop fighting.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.